Broadcasting from beautiful downtown Tallahassee, it's Nantan Lupin at the Drive-In.
St. Joan, 1957, is an Anglo film adaptation of a George Bernard Shaw play. The movie flows like a play and brings very little originality to the story. Quite frankly, I would not even review this film except for Otto Preminger directing and Richard Widmark's over-the-top portrayal of the Dauphin or Dauphin, Charles VII.
He pretends to command the army. And whenever I find a friend I can care for, he kills him.
Of course, we're still on the Richard Widmark line. This movie is told in flashback after Charles wakes in his bedroom to find the 25-year dead Joan there. They jump back to the beginning of her story and then end again in the bedroom. As I previously said, Richard Widmark was cast as the Dauphin, Charles VII. I covered him pretty extensively in episode 26, Time Limit 1957, if you want to read more about him. Jean Seberg played St. Joan of Arc. Born in Iowa, Jean won a publicity contest in which Preminger chose between 18,000 women to play Joan. This film and her next helped to stall her career until Breathless 1960. In all, she was in over 30 movies, including Lilith 1964 with Warren Beatty, and one of my personal favorites, Paint Your Wagon 1969, where she played the wife of Lee Marvin and Clint Eastwood. She became active in the anti-Vietnam War movement and was associated with the Black Panthers.
Sorry I had a fight in the middle of your Black Panther party.
She died at the age of 40 in 1979 from an apparent suicide by barbiturates. Richard Todd was acting as Dunois, Bastard of Orleans. Todd was a British actor that received limited fame in U.S. movies. In World War II, he served as a paratrooper. He peaked with The Hasty Heart, 1949. Following this, he was generally a character actor in British films. Sir John Gielgud was cast as the Earl of Warwick. Gielgud was one of the greatest Shakespearean actors with a theater career that spanned 64 years. His first motion picture was the silent Who is the Man, 1924, with his last being Elizabeth, 1998. Oddly, he won a Best Supporting Actor Oscar playing the butler in Arthur, 1981. Harry Andrews played English priest John de Stamberger. Andrews, like most English actors, began performing Shakespeare on the stage. His first film role was in Paratrooper, 1953. Some of his other roles include Moby Dick, 1956, The Devil's Disciple, 1959, 55 Days at Peking, 1963, The Psychotic Marionette in The Hill, 1965, with Sean Connery, The Agony and the Ecstasy, 1965, with Charlton Heston, The Charge of the Light Brigade, 1968, and The Battle of Britain, 1969. Finlay Currie was cast as the Archbishop of Reims. Currie was born in Scotland and began stage work at the age of 20. It took him 34 more years before he began film work. After that, he had steady work for 30 more years. He is well known for playing Magwitch in Great Expectations, 1946. However, one of his greatest roles was that of Shunderson, Dr. Pretorius's, Cary Grant's faithful servant in People Will Talk, 1951. After he was done with movies, he became an antique dealer. He died at the age of 90 in England. Story. The opening scene is set in the bedroom of Charles VII of France, Richard Widmark. He is having a fitful sleep. It has been 25 years since the execution of Joan of Arc, Jean Seberg. Joan appears in his room. She calls him Charlie in a very informal way. The king tells her that she has been retried and that her sentence has been annulled following her death. The movie switches back 25 years, and Joan is preventing the hens from laying and the cows from giving milk until the squire gives her a horse, armor, and men to go see the Dauphin. She gives a great speech, and the squire gives her what she requests. As soon as he does, the hens start laying again. Joan and 3 riders head off to meet the Dauphin. Joan has switched from a long-haired maid to short hair and military clothing. When she arrives at the Dauphin's castle, a man accosts her and she says he is near death, and a second later he drops dead. Her letter of introduction from the squire is taken to the Dauphin. The captain of the guard believes in Joan because of the death of the man. The commander of the army is very abusive to the Dauphin.
You bully.
Hold your tongue, do you hear?
Oh, I hear you. You needn't shout. The whole castle can hear. Why don't you go and shout at the English and beat them for me? Don't you raise your hand to me. It's high treason.
How dare you? Come, this will not do, my Lord Chamberlain. Please. We must keep some sort of order. And you, sir, if you cannot rule your kingdom, at least try to rule yourself.
Thank you. You're always ready with a lecture, huh?
They try to trick Joan by having someone pretend to be king.
Music, enough! Listen to me, everybody. Arrange yourselves. What's the trouble? Come, arrange yourselves. Bluebeard, up to the throne. You will pretend to be me.
Pretend to be that thing, only Michael.
But Joan, guided by God, sees through their trick. The Archbishop of Reims, Finlay Currie, is taken in by Joan's charm, and she gets to meet the Dauphin alone. The Dauphin believes and gives Joan command of the army. Joan heads off to Orleans with her convert, the captain of the guard, while the nobles of the court play on without a care. When Joan arrives, the West Winds are keeping Dunois, Bastard of Orleans, played by Robert Todd, from crossing the river.
Are you the bastard?
Are you the maid?
She prays and the winds change, and the bastard becomes a new convert. The French army takes Orleans, and the Dauphin can be crowned king in the cathedral. Charles is so weak he barely makes it through the coronation.
Oh, the weight of these robes. I thought I should have dropped when you loaded this crown onto me. You must be nearly dead. Your robes must weigh a ton. And that famous holy oil Joan talks so much about is rancid.
Your Majesty, that oil is nearly 1,000 years old. It was brought by an angel to King Clovis.
The king is done with Joan, and he wants no more from her. Joan cries and shows vanity and doubt about her mission. She craves the return to battle. The king plays hopscotch, and Joan confronts him to move on Paris. The archbishop threatens her, and the bastard denies her.
What on earth is the voice of the church, and all the voices that come to you are the echoes of your own willfulness.
That is not true.
What? You dare tell the archbishop in his own palace that he lies?
They tell her she is alone, and if caught, she will be burned as a witch. A little bit of foreshadowing there. It switches back to the bedroom, and the king tells her he gave her good advice. The Earl of Warwick, John Gielgud, comes to the dream and said he paid to have her tried after she was captured by the Burgundians.
I am the Earl of Warwick, madam. You may not remember the name, but I paid £16,000 for you when the Burgundians knocked you off your horse.
I never saw you at my trial.
Your trial was a church matter, madam. I saw you, but only through the peephole of your cell. This is the one chance I have to speak to you. You know how it is, heaven and hell, Oxford and Cambridge, they never really mix.
And that burning Joan made her a saint and Charles a king. It switches back to Joan in the cell being questioned by the Inquisitor, Felix Almer. The English give her to the Catholic Church for trial. They have the trial and try to catch her in heresy. In real life, they got her on a charge of cross-dressing. In the movie, they threatened to put her on the rack. The Earl of Warwick and John de Stamberger, Harry Andrews, complain that Joan is not being taken care of fast enough. De Stamberger talks about Joan being shot through the neck at Orleans and fighting all day. The trial begins, and Joan signs a confession. But when she finds out that she would be given life in prison, she recants. They find her guilty and excommunicate her. The Earl of Warwick sends in his men to carry out the burning. She is denied a cross, but an English soldier gives her 2 sticks tied together. Many in the crowd are struck with remorse as she dies, including Stamberger. Following the burning, the master executioner meets with the Earl of Warwick and says everything burned except her heart, and he would dispose of any evidence that she ever existed. The scene switches back to the king's dream, and Warwick says the church was as much to blame as the English. The king says he saw justice done to Bishop Cauchon, Anthony Walbrook, but the bishop appears and denies the king's statement. The bishop says they excommunicated his dead body for his part in the trial.
Peace. It's always you good men who do the big mischiefs. Look at me. I am not Charles the Good, nor Charles the Wise, nor Charles the Bold. Joan's worshippers may even call me Charles the Coward because I did not pull her out of the fire. But I ask you, what king of France has done better?
The bastard shows and says he has driven the English out and he is still alive. He says her ways were right and that he should have not let her be burned, but he was busy at the time. The man that gave Joan a cross arrives from hell and says he has 1 day off a year for tying the sticks together. He also says he is out of time and makes a jab at the Nazis and gives a shout out to the Americans.
It seems that all the best people are in hell.
Now, in your century, my lord.
What do you mean, my century?
I'm out of time, my lord. Then there were the Germans. They were a bad lot that time they held Paris. You couldn't teach them much in hell they didn't know already. Don't worry, they've gone again. The Americans helped chase them out.
The king says he has dreamed of her enough. She walks upstairs towards heaven, asking how long before the world will be ready for its saints. Postscript. Preminger was criticized for casting a rookie among so many veterans, and her acting was panned. World-famous short summary. Country girl goes to the big city, and things end badly at first, but later get better. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Remember, you can find all of the links at snarkymoviereviews.com, and I appreciate those reviews in iTunes.